My name is Hawai'i Worthington. I'm a second-year graduate student at the School of Public Health in their Department of Epidemiology, and my interests lie in Indigenous health. So this past summer 2020, I spent my practicum with the Hawaii State Department of Health, looking at the racial disparities in COVID-19 cases in the state of Hawaii. So the issue came with we were originally working, or the Department of Health was originally working off of the persons under investigation form that came from the CDC, and that form disaggregates race into 7 different categories that are a federal standard. The way that that is disaggregated is not reflective of Hawaii's population. So the data that we were putting out was not useful to Hawaii's population and was not applicable to implementing relevant solutions. So over the course of my practicum, I redid the code and re-disaggregated data in a way that was reflective of Hawaii's population. So if you look to the left of my poster, I have a brief background as to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the research objective was to disaggregate data in a way that was usable and reflective of Hawaii's population. So the first thing we do in this methodology, which we found from the Office of Health Status Monitoring and Vital Statistics, is that you take out anyone that is Native Hawaiian first and label them as Native Hawaiian. You want to have a methodology that has people labeled only as one specific race instead of counted towards multiple races, because you want everything to sum to 100, and it's a lot easier for denominator purposes. And also the other important note is that this Office of Health Status Monitoring Vital Statistics methodology, we were also able to find population data that was disaggregated in the same way. So we were able to have denominators for our descriptive epidemiology, like numbers. So again, the first thing you do is you take out anyone that's any Native Hawaiian. Most Hawaiians in the state of Hawaii are of mixed race, so they're Hawaiian and something else. It's not super common that you'll find people that are only Native Hawaiian. The next thing you do is you just aggregate anyone that is only white. So anyone that only identifies as a white race is taken out and labeled as white. The remaining individuals, who are people like myself, who are part white and part some other ethnicity, they're assigned to the first non-white race listed that corresponds to the following 7 aggregated race categories, which includes Pacific Islander, Filipino, Japanese, Chinese, other Asian, African American, and other. And a side note is that we don't use the Hispanic ethnicity. It is recorded, but the way that people in Hawaii understand and use or note that they are of Hispanic ethnicity is a little different than in the mainland or in the continental United States, because you have people that are of like Filipino descent that are Spanish. You also have Latinos, but that's not as common out here. So it's not like it is in the continental United States. So disaggregating by race is much more reflective of the community instead. And the results from using this methodology are located in the middle towards the right. So Pacific Islanders had the highest case ratio of 117 cases per 100,000 in their population. This was double than the second highest, which was Filipinos, who had 54 cases per 100,000. Filipinos, Japanese, and other Asians have the highest proportions of hospitalizations, and also our death count was pretty minor. It was very small, so due to cell count, that those numbers weren't released at this time. This data is from June. And I have continued to work with the Department of Health as a data specialist up until the present. So the patterns that you see here pretty much persisted as case numbers rose. So some of the conclusions from this, and this is also ties into our biggest limitation, is that we didn't have any confounder data that was usable and consistently collected. Therefore, we couldn't perform analyses looking at multivariable analysis, regression, any of that. So we can only really hypothesize with what data we did have on some of the potential risk factors. And this includes underlying health conditions, comorbidities, specifically like diabetes and kidney disease, where 51% of Hawaii's population is pre-diabetic or diabetic. It's a very big issue out here. And other populations also have big issues like kidney disease, pretty prominent. Access to care and health information, multi-generational family housing. In Hawaii, a lot of the cultures, especially the Filipino and Pacific Islander cultures, you have multiple generations living in the same home because of the high cost of living and just cultural norms. They don't usually use people that are in care homes or you use like nursing facilities. They really keep their families in the same household. It's a familial responsibility. It's a different perspective than what you see in other places. So multi-generational family housing is pretty common. That was a big issue because sometimes you'd have one case and then you'd have like 15 to 17 because of the amount of people living in a very tight, limited space. Also, if you look at the top right-hand side, that's a map of the population density of Hawaii. So as you can see towards the middle where all the red is, it's where a lot of our population is located, on the island of Oahu, where there's a lot more resources, but there's a lot more people living on top of one another. And when you get to the outer islands, it's a lot more rural, but that also comes with issues with access to care and accessibility. Occupational patterns like essential workers, and then low socioeconomic status. Some other limitations that we had is that this data comes only from positive PCR COVID-19 tests. This does not include probable tests, and it does not include untested cases. So the true incidence is unknown. And there's a lack of access or desire to, if there is a lack of access or desire to seek healthcare services, there's also a detection bias as well. That is my presentation, and thank you for watching.